Welcome to another video on Power BI interview questions. Hope you're watching this series from beginning. So the next question which you may be asked, what's the difference between all and all selected? Let's look at the very simple syntax of all and all selected. So now this is net all means net, calculate net and all, and in all I can specify a column here and table here. This is without specifying anything. Similarly, net all using calculate net all selected. Now what's the difference in between these two? So basically what happens, as we have learned in the past, we have something known as filter context. Now filter context may come because of slicers, filters, or maybe because of the visual row is also going to put a filter context on the data. Now all is going to remove everything. We'll learn this with an example. Or disregards the filter on a specific column or a table to retrieve unfiltered data for the calculation. For every value it's going to retrieve that on particular column or a table, whatever we have used there. Now all selected preserve the user selection of filter. So user selection of filter that you have done, that filter context would be preserved in the specified column while removing the filter from the other column, allowing the selective adjustment. So this is going to happen in the all selected. So what is in short, we can say that all ignores the filter context, including the filter and the visual filter row context means the visual row which is going to put a filter context, that is also going to be removed. But on the other hand, all selected is only going to ignore the visual filter context, which is basically because of the row of the visual. So let's understand with an example. Let me come up with brand net visual. Make it as a table visual. Duplicate this. Create a little smaller visual with category. I'm adjusting the sizes. In the second visual, I'm clicking on the brand arrow and then I'll make it category. I need slicers also, and I'm going to use simple slicer here. I'll use brand slicer. Copy paste. Let me change this with category slicer. Copy paste. And state slice. I added 3 slices. This one I'll use state. I have 3 slices. Let me convert this one into drop down. Instead of net, I've taken margin here. So let me correct that. Clearly here, net. Net is the measure we are going to use predominantly in all of calculation, but we sorted descending here. Now what I want here is, I want a grand total. How do I get a grand total? We'll take help of calculate. Let's create a new measure for the grand total. Click on any of the measure and get a measure tool. And here we will go ahead and say total net brand. We will say calculate. Which calculate, we can use the expression also, but we'll start with calculate. Now there is function all which can help us. What does all can take? All can take table or a column name. What is there in this column? Why don't we start with the column name then? We use item brand. I drag it here. And here you can see I'm seeing grand total. Let me put it to other visual. In other visual where there is a category, I am not seeing that grand total on each row. Why it is happening? Because here in the case of brand, I am saying all item brand and it should remove the filter context of all item brand. So the filter context of item brand has been removed, and that is why each row of the brand is giving me the grand total. But we have not told that to remove the filter context of category. And that is why what you observe that the filter context of the category is not getting removed in the visual rows. So visual rows are still applying the filter context of categories, but the grand total is not getting that filter, because in the grand total now again we are able to ignore the filter context. Now when I select brand 3, now what is happening here is you are only able to see brand 3's value. Now when you see brand 3's value, you will observe that in case of the brand visual, we are able to see the grand total value. External filter or the filter which is coming, it is going to reduce the visual to only brand 3. But the context of the filter has been removed from the visual row. The context of the visual and the context of the slicer filter has been removed, and we are getting grand total both in the row where I am getting brand 3 as well as grand total. Why in case of the category visual, we are getting 2 categories. Now we are getting 2 categories because of the brand 3 again, because brand 3 contains 2 categories. But for those category, the category filter is still applying. So because of that category filter, I am getting the data for those rows based on the category, but the grand total, again, I am able to ignore item brand, I am getting the total one. If I add brand 2 and brand 3, as you can see in the brand visual, I am getting both the rows, I am getting the grand total, which is ignoring the visual as well as the slicer filter context. And as you can see in the category visual, as expected, it is able to use the category filter context in the visual, but the grand total, again, it is ignoring all the filter context, because in the grand total anyway category is not available, and I am able to get grand total. So we got total net. What happened? Need both case of category and item actually. Category and item belongs to same table, isn't it? What I can do here is I can go ahead and create this measure again, and this time instead of item brand, I simply use item. What happens? I'll call it total net item. I'll bring into the first visual, I'll bring it in second visual. Now in this case, what you are observing, that both the visuals are showing the grand total. Even the categories filter context and the brands filter context from the visual has been removed. The reason for that is basically that we are using the item table. So anything which we are using from the item table in the visual will not be able to force a context. Similarly, the slicers will not be able to force a context, and the visuals will not be able to force the context. Even if I remove those brand 2 and brand 3, now you will see all the values, and in case of all the values, again we are going to get the total for all the rows, because the filter context of all the brand and category has been removed from each row, and we are getting grand total in the each row of the visual. But what happens when I put the state filter? Let's say I put the state filter on Alaska. Now you are seeing that the filter context is applied, but the visual rows filter is not getting applied. We are getting the Alaska grand total. Why it is? Because again the filter was on item for the specifically for the second column, so it is ignoring the items filter context, but it can't ignore the states filter context because we have not talked about the state into our formula. So because we have not talked about the state into our formula, it cannot ignore the filter context or the filter of state in the visualization. So visualization will get filtered for the state, but it will remove the context of brand and category because we have said all item. What can I do here? Here comes my third all formula. And the third all formula is where we are going to remove everything. Now all can have multiple columns if you want. I can either say sales or I don't say anything. One of the two things I can do will have this two formulas in one go. So I'll say total net is one measure. I can have one more version of this one out this one. Now because all the dimensions are getting applied at the sales, so most of the time these may end up giving us the same result. I'll bring in net, and let's not add it to the second one. There's no need of that. Now as you can see, when we have bought this total net and total net sales, where we have used the sales table, it is also start ignoring the states context. Why it has been started ignoring the states filter context? Because the all has been applied on the sales table, so anything passing to the sales table is getting ignored. If you apply the filters, now if you apply let's say brand filter, your values will reduce because this is going to reduce the values in the filter, but the rows which are still remaining, for that the filter context, the way all and is removing, will still apply. Same way if you filter category, again you will get the data of brand and category based on your filter, only that much categories or that much brand. But yes, for the individual row of the visual, the filter context would be removed. Complete filter context would be removed. But what does it gives us? It gives us the grand total. This is all for us. Let's learn about all select. For that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. I want to keep everything as is, removing the filter. And let me do one thing. I'll keep only this one, because rest of the behavior in case of all selected is going to be same. What's the major difference between all and all? Let's start part and understand. Now let me create this measure with the all selected. So what's the difference between this all and all selected? So in case of all selected, what would happen here is basically all selected is going to honor the filters which we apply, but it is not going to honor the visuals rows which are putting the visual filter. So visual rows filter context would be ignored, but the filter cannot be ignored. So let's say if I put filter on brand 12, you can see that the all selected is showing me only the brand 12's value. It is not showing me overall value. Why? Because it is going to honor the external filters or the slicer which has been applied. Within that boundary, it will show me the total. So if I select, let's say brand 12, 13 and 2, now it is showing me total of these three for all selected one. So it is ignoring the visual rows filter context. Now let me modify the other visual. It's the same job. What I'm going to do is I have to change this. Instead of category, I'll bring in state here on the geography dimension. Let me go ahead and remove these two and bring in total. Need a little bit more width for this. What do you see? So what you are doing here is you are saying ignore the filter context of item, not of state. And because you are not ignoring the filter context of state, the state values are still filtering your visual rows and you are getting the state level data. You do this. But you go ahead and ignore the context of sales table itself. Item net is all selected. I'm saying ignore all the context which is coming to this. I'll add this to the first table, I'll add this table. And we require a lot of overlap. Now when I use the sales, now what happened? The all selected applies or these to sales. All selected now is going to ignore anything which is coming to the sales table, and because of that now you are going to get the total which is of my selected values and it will be displayed for each rows. Now in case you apply a state filter, it will honor that also. Now so whatever filters you apply, that will be honored irrespective of what dimension they are coming. So your grand total will depend on the filter selection in case of all selected, and based on that particular set of filters, it is going to give you the grand total. You can have an all selected without the sales table. This case going to give almost similar kind of results because the sales table is the base table where we applied or the base fact table where we applied. So now you have understood the difference between all and all selected. So there would be times when we are going to use these, especially in time intelligence. Let's say I want to create a previous period. You might not select a previous period because previous period might not be in my filter criteria. So let's say I selected current month. Now when I selected current month, I need previous month. I need to ignore date tables, filter context completely, and then bring in the previous month's value. So in that case, I'm going to use all. But if the values are available within my filter context and I want to play around, then in that case, what I can use all selected. So let's say I want percentage of total irrespective of my selection, then I'll use all. Or I need percentage of total based on my selection, I'll use all selected. I want my rank based on the original values without considering any filter, I'll use all. I want rank based on my selection, I'll use all selected. So these are the some places where you will use all or all selected depending on what exactly you wanted to achieve. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. Your curiosity and quest for the knowledge are what's inspiring this series. If you have any question or topic you would like me to explore in this series, please let me know in the comments below. Your support is truly means the world to us. It's the reason we create and share these videos. If you have enjoyed this content and would like to see more, please consider liking, sharing and commenting. It helps us immensely. Until next time, keep learning and stay connected. Thank you.